Child abuse is probably just about the most difficult subject to talk about, and I'd really rather not. It's easy to avoid because child abuse normally happens in private. But what do you do? What do you say when you see child abuse happening in public, and not just in public, but at United Nations headquarters to rapturous applause? Hey everybody, I'm Steve Green with Bill Whittle and Scott Ott, and this is Right Angle, brought to you by the members of BillWhittle.com. And I'd like to talk to you about a young woman, 16 years old, a girl from Sweden named Greta Thunberg, who's become quite the sensation on the climate panic circuit. And let me just show you a brief clip of her recent appearance at the United Nations.
This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones.
Gentlemen, in case you don't know, this is not just some 16-year-old girl who got all concerned about the environment one day and started speaking out about her favorite cause. Greta is actually the daughter of an actor and an opera singer in Sweden. And if I can recall what I wrote, I'll just go to my notes here. She suffers from Asperger's syndrome, obsessive compulsive disorder, and selective mutism, which I'd never even heard of before I started researching her yesterday.
What is that?
She's only mute sometimes, apparently not when the TV cameras are rolling.
I see.
Clearly, I'm no medical professional, but these things could have been brought on, I suppose, and this is according to public sources, starting at the age of 8, Thunberg was subjected to such a barrage of climate panic from her own parents and others that she eventually became depressed and lethargic, developed an eating disorder, which is one of the reasons that at the age of 16 she's so tiny, apparently. And now this poor, troubled young woman is being paraded around the world as the voice of sanity on climate change. Bill, what are we doing to our, excuse me, I shouldn't say we, because it's not the right that's doing this. What is the left doing to children?
Let me just get this clearly said at the beginning, okay?
Yeah.
I agree with you, and I agree with your description. I think what she went through is child abuse, and I don't think she deserved to be there. So when I criticize her, I'm criticizing the performance, I'm criticizing the public figure.
Sure.
But I genuinely have sympathy for her being put into that position.
Absolutely.
Now, with all that said, speaking as a person who's directed a few things in my life, if you say she's the daughter of an actor and an opera singer, having watched that performance, I would say less opera singer, more actor, because it is transparently a performance. I mean, it's transparently. The whole idea of using children to advance political causes, I think, is disgraceful anyway, and I've seen a few of it on the right, but it's endemic on the left. Trot your kids out there to hold up signs in order to get all of the moral certainty that comes with being 16 years old. But in this particular case, this is a performance. I know what performances look like, and I've seen them. I've seen people who are her age speak extemporaneously about things. I've seen people get excited. I've seen people get angry. I've seen people burst into tears. I've seen all of it. But this is not that. And I knew it in 10 seconds. And so you have to ask yourself, really, what is going on here? If this is, in fact, and this is, again, Steve, this is where the child abuse thing comes in. I'm convinced that this is a performance, but I'm also convinced she believes it. In other words, I'm utterly convinced she believes it, but I'm also utterly convinced that this is her turning the outrage up to 11 because she has the rhetorical tools to do it, which means that on some level, this isn't really true. This is kind of a performance. It's fiction, right? If you ask a person first of all, the whole idea of a 16-year-old, let's just put that on the side. If you ask a person to come up and speak to the United Nations because of the passion that they have for a subject, and if that passion is something that can be turned on or off in a performance, then you're not really selling passion. You're selling something else. You're selling talent. And the still picture here, which we use for our thumbnail, and I guess I'll see if I can get him to just stick it up here again. The still picture of her at the microphone She's 16 years old, but she looks 60. She has the expression of a 60-year-old. She has this perpetually kind of furiously angry, completely terrified look that does not belong on 16-year-olds of any kind anywhere. And to the parents who put her through this, I'm sure they were shocked when she developed selective mutism and eating disorders and so on. But I'm not. The whole purpose of childhood is to be protected from things that children should not have to worry about. Children should have to worry about somebody said something mean about my dress at school, or that, I've got to meet this guy at the water tower at 3:00 and he's, and I'm terrified. That's what children should be worried about. To have implanted in this person this ongoing terror on the part of her parents, just in order to virtue signal how advanced they are, is actual child abuse. I agree with you completely.
All right, Scott, I want to quote to you something that my friend Kira Davis over at Red State wrote yesterday. She said, "I've been very clear about my belief that Greta is being abused. This is nothing but adults pimping out a child for entertainment." Though I'd add that it's really more about obtaining political power than just entertainment. We're just accepting it because she's an activist, but she is a child. Kira also writes, "I've been reporting on child abuse and entertainment for years now, and I can tell you with 100% certainty that she has at least a few sketchy adults in her circle right now." That circle last week expanded to include former President Obama, who went all in on the act and congratulated her on her activism in a tweet, saying she represents something along the lines of what the Obama Foundation can't even do. Part of me wants to ask you sort of a clinical question, but just in your heart, how do you react to a story like this in a clip like we saw?
My first thought was, this ain't Malala. This is not this kid who clearly was in control of her own ideas, who had fought for justice and had fought for education for girls, and got up and spoke before the United Nations. If you compare these two, for want of a better term, performances, you will see that only one of them is a performance. That the other one is essentially a young woman in command of the facts, who has not been brainwashed by her parents, but in fact has been, shot in the head by terrorists who were trying to keep her from getting educated. By the way, right before we went to record this, Ed Driscoll posted at instapundit.com that Fox News has now apparently banned Michael Knowles, our buddy from over at the Daily Wire, they're not going to invite him back as a guest because Michael Knowles referred to this Greta young girl as a mentally ill person. And I want to read you
can't speak the truth, I
want to read you the way Fox News responded to this. The comment made by Michael Knowles, who was a guest on The Story tonight, was disgraceful. We apologize to Greta Thunberg and to our viewers, said the spokesperson in an interview with the Washington Post. Knowles basically said in response on Twitter, "There's nothing shameful about living with mental disorders. What is shameful is exploiting a child, particularly a child with mental disorders, to advance your political agenda." And
Fox can go to hell. That's just disgusting.
As this goes deeper than just abusing a young person, this is not some secret. Apparently, this is a young lady who has publicly said that she's got these various kinds of mental conditions. So he wasn't saying something as an insult. He was actually outraged, as we are, that a young woman who has these kind of challenges was being abused as a poster child. And frankly, you hate to say this, but frankly, her delivery and her demeanor, because of her conditions, makes her a more endearing figure for this kind of a movement. It makes it more clickbait worthy for people to want to watch. And that is despicable.
And
Steve,
it makes it.
Can I add something?
Oh, yeah, please do.
Just real quick, because Scott was just on this. The entire belief system of the left is the bigger the victim you are, the more truth you can manage to rope out. And for her saying that she's autistic and she has these other things, those are increasing her victimhood score, which increases her credibility score, which increases the truthiness of what she's saying. And that's there. But the thing I wanted to say actually is I'm looking at this picture that I mentioned, and her expression is so strange. And you know what I realized? You know who she looks exactly like?
No.
Expression-wise? She looks exactly like Blasey Ford. Exactly. It's the exact same expression. It's this tormented kind of, of outrage and I don't know. I mean, I'm going to do a split screen of these two pictures. Seriously. It's that same kind of very serious kind of, loathing that you would have at a terrible injustice done either to you or the planet. And I think the face is something like this. So anyway.
And Bill, I want to be clear about this. I am outraged, not so much at this kid, but she was groomed. And that's what makes me, that's what
for 16 years. She's been groomed for 16 years. She's been groomed for this performance.
What they've done to this poor kid is just unfathomable to me. And I literally mean that. I've got a tiny amount of personal experience in this area. My wife likes to tell the story, and it's really kind of a series of stories that gets congealed into one because this has happened to her more than once. I'm not trying to brag or boast here, but it's happened on several occasions where strangers have seen how just attractive and articulate my boys are. They're 9 and 13 now. And we've been hearing since our oldest was still in preschool, gosh, have you considered acting classes for him? Why aren't you folks in LA? My wife says every single time, it's my job to protect them from Hollywood types. I'm going to keep them as far away from that nonsense as I possibly can. Good. So we've seen the temptation that there is to, even in a helpful way, aim your children in that direction. But you look at the history of child actors, child performers, and it is the rare case where one of these young performers comes out a well-tuned, decent adult. And when you find out that our very first show, the very first time I hosted a segment with Bill Whittle, Scott Ott, and me on the old network, it was called Trifecta. The very first subject I covered was the death of Michael Jackson at the age of, 56 or 57 years old. And one of the things I commented on during that segment 10 years ago now is that you weren't shocked that Michael Jackson died at 56 or 57. You were shocked that he managed to live that long, given what we knew about the rearing he got and the pressures he was under from boyhood. Don't subject your kids to that, please. It's just the saddest thing you can do, even if it's in a positive way. And when it's done for the sake of political power, like we're seeing with poor Greta Thunberg, it may be the most shameful thing a parent can do to their child. That's the truth about that. I'm Steve Green with Bill Whittle and Scott Ott. This has been Right Angle, brought to you by the members of BillWhittle.com. If you like what you see, please, we'd love to have you on board. Click over to BillWhittle.com and become a member today. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.